Welcome to the DrumChats podcast, where we're talking anything and everything to do with drums. Today's topic, cymbals. Here are your hosts, Travis Davis and Dave Douglas.
Hey everybody, welcome to the DrumChats podcast. I am Dave, and sitting across the country from me is Travis. And today we're talking cymbals. So we have a lot to go through. And I guess we're going to hit up a bunch of the normal cymbal stuff, brands and finishes and like different types and sizes and all that good stuff. So let's get this thing going. Where do we start, Travis? Do we start with companies?
Man, I think that's the best way to start. Yeah, I mean, I think all drummers can really know the household names. There's Zildjian and Sabian, Paiste, Meinl. I think are the main companies out right now. But then we've got like the lesser known but quickly making their debut, like Soultone and Heartbeat, Collingwood, and
yeah, that's one that I discovered a while ago. I just like follow them on Instagram,
nice.
And I think it's just like one dude in the UK somewhere, and he's just like always lathing cymbals on Instagram. I don't even know, but it just seems interesting. And I think, like I said, I think it's just like a one-man operation, but it seems like he does really cool work.
I don't know. Whenever I see cymbals, we also talked about Dream cymbals in Istanbul, and those guys have been around for a while. But
yeah.
I think of like those are big, companies and like with warehouses, and for one guy to be lathing his own cymbals, like that's an impressive amount of work for one dude. I would think.
Yeah, I also came across two more, like I think also one-man companies, and I can't remember them right now, and I didn't write them down. I just like caught them in passing. It was like John something. It was like it's just his name. Maybe you can look that up. I don't know. And then the other one was, I think, like Burn Cymbals. I think both of those were one-man operations as well. And actually, I don't know how long Dream has been around. I don't think I heard of Dream until maybe, I don't know, like maybe 6 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
I might be underestimating that. I'm not sure. But yeah, but they are a big company.
Yeah.
At least to some degree. I don't intimately know their company or anything, but
yeah, you and me both. I think.
Yeah.
But
I know they've been around.
I think the first time I'd ever seen an advertisement for Dream was in an issue of Drum Magazine, but the way that their logo was, I thought it said cream. Oh
yeah,
cymbals.
it's like. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky to make out the D at the beginning of the word.
Well, what stuck out to me was their, I guess their warranty process, where you could send them your Dream cymbals and they would.
You can send them any cymbal.
Is it any? It's any cymbal?
Well, I mean, I don't know about the return policy. Like if you break cymbals that are theirs, is that what you're talking about?
Well, I had heard that if you send them your cracked cymbals, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was any cymbal. They would either melt it down and make a new one, or they would send you a new one for the price of the ones you sent in.
Ooh, man. Yeah, I don't know exactly about that situation, but I will say that I actually do have a Dream cymbal, and I really like it. It's super trashy and bendy and wobbly, and just like, I really like it. It's cool. And it's like the vintage something series, vintage. I don't know. Maybe it's just called the vintage series.
Okay.
But it's super cool. But I actually took, I think, like 18 or 20 broken cymbals in.
Oh my God.
and they give you $1. I think they give you $1 an inch.
That's right. Yes, I
It's
have read that before.
$1 an inch for broken cymbals. So you take a 20-inch cymbal and it's broken, you get $20 towards a Dream cymbal.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty awesome.
I think I did take like 18 or 20 broken cymbals in.
Okay.
And but they don't accept garbage cymbals. Because I did have one that was just like a total trash can, and they were like, I don't think they're going to take this one. Yeah. So maybe we can get into that a little bit too at some point, like the alloys that are used in cymbals, I guess.
For sure.
yeah, we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves right
Well,
now. But
let's back up a little bit. What cymbals do you use? I mean, I know I've seen you play a couple different companies, but what like on this like on the
yeah,
last tour or what you've been doing recently? What cymbals do you use?
Meinl, I would use Meinl everything.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I love Meinl. They're the absolute best, man. I actually had a deal with Meinl for a long time, and then Reliant K became less and less active over the past few years, and then they kind of revamped some of their process for artists
Sweet.
endorsements, and and after like replacing like 3 or 4 cymbals in like 6 months, the rep was like, dude, I think we're gonna have to like back away from this. I don't know if we have room anymore on our roster.
Oh, geez, man.
Yeah, so I don't work with them directly anymore. But I absolutely love Meinl products. I think they're so good. But I'm
Cool.
super familiar with Zildjian. I used them for a long time. And then, like I said, I do have a Dream cymbal, and I got into Dream because I was running sound at a live venue in Cleveland called the Beachland, and this band Ivan and Alyosha. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
I think they're from Seattle. Maybe I could be wrong. They were playing, and I was running sound for them, and the drummer's cymbals, like for whatever reason, like I never am just like, man, those cymbals sound great. Like, I don't know. It's just not a thing. I mean, I think I noticed it more even just in the last couple of years, but at the time, it wasn't something that really ever stood out to me. It was just like cymbals were cymbals or whatever. And for whatever reason, this dude's cymbals, I was just like, oh my gosh, those cymbals sound so good. And I went up afterwards, and he was playing all Dream cymbals, and I was just like, what the heck is this company? I've never even heard of them, you know? And then it happened at like 1 or 2 other shows within like a year. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to check out these Dream cymbals, because they have a super interesting sound too. They're pretty trashy and dark, especially the vintage line. So yeah, but Meinl is like really where my heart's at when it comes to cymbals. If your heart can be somewhere when it comes to cymbals, you know? I don't know.
That's cool, man. I've heard.
What about you? Are you in the Zildjian family?
I'm in the Zildjian family, man. I think I've played.
All right.
I think I've played Zildjian ever since I started.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, I've played on other kits with other cymbals, and you know, I admit there's some really cool cymbals out there, but just for me and my taste, I don't know if it's been my influences or what, but I've been playing Zildjian pretty much the duration of how long I've been playing drums.
Yeah, and you know, I know a few people that play Paistes, but I always had like a really bad impression of them. I really kind of disliked them forever,
Sure.
and then, but I do know that their like top lines are like super good.
Yeah. So
I think maybe my early impressions of Paiste were with some of their lower brand or lower lines.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a couple buddies that play them, including Chad Butler from Switchfoot. He plays them.
Yeah.
So, you know, his cymbals sound good.
They do. Yeah. Well,
I think he uses all crashes. He just like crashes across the whole kit.
Pretty,
you know?
well,
or I'm sorry. What I mean is rides. Rides across the whole kit. It's all rides.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think at least right now, Zildjian, Sabian, and Meinl are the three companies that continuously come out with new products that I've noticed. I don't know about Paiste doing that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I feel like even Sabian, man, they're coming out with some really cool stuff. I have to admit.
Yeah.
A couple of the guys that I've met through DrumChats, like Garrett Goodwin and Jeremy Furstenfeld from Blue October, Rich Redmond, those guys play Sabian, and they have a lot of good things to say. And so when I was researching some of Sabian's new lineups, like I think it's the Paragon series.
Paragon, yeah.
There's another one, and I can't remember what it was.
Those ones seem cool, and then the other ones that stand out to me from Sabian were I think it's the HH and HHX maybe, or something like that. I think they're like hand hammered. I think that's what it stands for.
Right.
And I guess we need to get into some of that stuff, but like for me, the hammered stuff, like the hand hammered stuff, is where it's at, you know.
Yeah.
Everything's, well, I shouldn't say everything's got its place, but you know,
what
to each his own a little bit. But
yeah.
I absolutely love hammered cymbals. I love like super thin, bendy cymbals that are wobbly, you know? I want to hit it and see it wobble.
Yeah.
And the first thing I do when I pick up a cymbal, if I'm going to like I always, you know, you got to hit it and stuff. But it was like one of the first things I do is I pick it up and I try to bend it. See how far it'll bend. 'Cause it's just like, man, the farther it bends, the more I'm going to like it. I just know it.
Yeah.
So but yeah, Sabian seems like they got some cool stuff happening. Did they do the big and uglies? That's Sabian, right?
Yeah, I saw a video of Cobus, and I'm not even gonna try and pronounce his last name because I can't remember it. But he did a like a special series for Sabian when they first came out with the big and ugly, and that name, they stand true to that name, man. They are big and ugly.
It's true. They are wobbly as heck too.
I believe it.
But they're all like unfinished, right? They're like unlathed.
They're super raw.
And just like super raw.
Yeah.
So super dark and earthy. And that kind of stuff's really cool. And one time I had the opportunity to go through the whole, like the Meinl warehouse.
Nice.
The U.S. headquarters for Meinl is in Nashville. And they took me through there one time. I was trying to pick up a couple cymbals before Reliant K Tour. And I just kept like grabbing like their super like raw unfinished ones and wanted them so badly, but I was like, I'm grabbing 2 cymbals and these do not work for Reliant K. Like I can't get these, you know, but I really wanted them, but they just didn't work with what I had going on. So I have to go with something a little bit more middle of the road, although that's kind of, you know, I've kind of tried to push things a little bit darker over the years with my setup for Reliant K. And a lot of that's because that I'm a singing drummer, you know. So a lot of that's just to make the cymbals quieter, to get them out of the way quicker, because drums and vocals just don't go together at all. They're just always a problem. So for me, a lot of times, like getting a little bit of a quieter cymbal, something that's a little bit drier and can get out of the way, is beneficial from that standpoint. Plus, I like the sound, but yeah. But so I'm kind of trying to split the difference on that. Something that's, you know, that's still kind of modern, that works with pop rock and the pop punk stuff that Reliant K kind of traditionally does. But also trying to get them out of the way a little bit too, so people can hear me sing.
Right.
You know.
Well, do you ever do any like tone control on stage, like in the studio or in music videos you would, but do you ever do any dampening for your cymbals on like live?
Not typically. There have been sometimes in specific venues.
Okay.
Wherever, like, however the stage is set up, or it's like a really small venue, or the drums are against a back wall or something like that. And, you know, sometimes whoever's running sound for us will be like, dude, the cymbals are out of control, you know? And so I've done a couple things, you know, thrown gaff tape on them or something like that, which it kind of just ruins them.
Sure.
But sometimes you need to make them quieter, and that's like the lesser of two evils, you know? So I've done that before, but the thing that was super surprising to me is putting moon gels on them.
Okay.
Brand new moon gels that are still sticky.
Yeah.
You can throw them on there and they'll stay on there. And it's cool because you can move them around like easier than tape, you know? So you can kind of find a spot that's like takes the edge off, but doesn't destroy the cymbal. So I've done that a few times too, and that's actually pretty cool. You can make that work, and they'll get out of the way. Okay. You know, and quiet down a little bit. So what about do you do any sort of thing like that?
Man, like I've just tried different things just to see what it would do, but live, like the church that I play for here in Austin, it's a 5,000 seater auditorium. So we've got
that's crazy.
We've got a pretty big enough room to where I don't need to dampen anything.
I would think so. 5,000.
Yeah, I think it's like 4,600 people. I think can fit in there. It's a big like amphitheater kind of setting.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. When I'm talking about having to control the cymbals, I'm talking about like a 400 person club or something.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So
or smaller, 200
so
person.
So normally no, but even in those smaller clubs, you know, 400 and even less, I've kind of done what you mentioned was I just pick quieter cymbals.
Oh sure.
Like a cymbal I mentioned to you earlier, one of my favorite cymbals of all time is a Zildjian 22-inch K Light Ride, but I use it as a crash. I use it as like an accessory crash because it's hand hammered and it's really thin and washy and blah blah blah. But I can be really versatile with that cymbal even with my playing, and my velocity of my stick is going to affect the volume of it. Whereas if I played a custom ride or any kind of brilliant finish, it's going to be loud no matter what.
Yeah, and this is actually something we should get into now,
Yeah.
because now we're talking about some of the differences with like how the cymbals are actually made and how they're finished, right?
Right.
Oh, and as a side note, is that the one that you told me that you cracked?
That's the one that I cracked. So it's lasted me like 9 years, and I just cracked it the other day. But my favorite cymbal of all time, no doubt.
That one.
Yeah.
Are you gonna salvage it?
I'm gonna try to. Yeah, I was reading up. I'm going to Nashville in about a month, and I'm gonna go visit Fork's Drum Closet, and I've been there a couple times.
Oh, dude, didn't it close? Isn't it closing?
I hope not.
I could be wrong, but I thought it was closing.
I heard that they're moving.
Oh,
I've heard.
okay.
I've heard that they're moving location. I don't know that for a fact. I know they're not closing, but I think that they're
For sure. Okay.
I'm pretty certain. But you're scaring me now.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I just thought I'd heard that they were closing, but yeah, maybe they're just moving. Maybe that was it.
Gotcha.
I just saw a lot of people get like saying farewell.
Oh wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. But no, I'd seen on their Instagram they gave a breakdown that they actually offer cymbal repair services for like $5 a crack or something, and I was like, well, that's cool, but I'm not in Nashville, so I'm gonna figure out how to do this myself. So I think you can take like metal shears and just cut around it and grind it down, and
you can try and do that. You know, I've done that with a couple cymbals, some more successful than others. But honestly, I've just used like a hand saw, like like a metal. Yeah.
And just went at it. Okay.
Yeah, and you just go for it and just try and round it out. I'll use something as like a template to like create a nice gentle curve.
Right.
Like, well, I don't know, whatever, a plate, like whatever, to create like a nice gentle curve, and then just like by hand, just like go for it, you know?
Yeah.
And then just use like metal files to like smooth the whole thing out, like round the little edges and stuff.
Yeah.
And it takes forever, but I've done it without like a machine.
Okay.
I don't know.
Cool.
I guess it's possible is all I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. And thankfully the crack it's only like 1/4 of an inch, so it's small enough to where the tonal integrity of what that cymbal is supposed to sound like won't be too affected, if at all. So hopefully I can salvage it for a little while longer.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
But with that being said, I chose that cymbal a lot of times because it's quieter, and like we were talking about finishes, whether it's brilliant finish or raw lathed finishes like Zildjian A series or the hand hammered stuff, and even like the Sabian big and ugly, how big of a difference all that stuff makes all around. I think one of the most obnoxious cymbals to me is a Zildjian A custom ping ride.
Oh no.
Because it's already brilliant finished. On top of that, it is so thick and heavy that the pinging of your stick is greatly exaggerated. And
right. So maybe we can start with that. Like, the thicker the cymbal, the heavier weight the cymbal is, the more stick definition that you're gonna have, right? But it also means like less wash. Like, it's not going to like open up easily if you try to crash on it.
Right.
It's like I would describe them as clanky.
Yeah, that's
like
a great
if you try
word.
to crash on a thick cymbal, it's just a clanky cymbal. You know.
Yeah.
There's no like soft stick tone that's just like this wash that opens up. It doesn't do that at all. It's just a clank.
Yeah.
You know. So there's that's why one of the first things I do, as I said, always grab the cymbal and bend it.
Right.
Because like, does it bend? Yeah. Like, if it doesn't bend, I don't want it.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So although I do have a Meinl sand ride that's quite thick.
Interesting.
But that's kind of a different thing. It's like a specific thing. It doesn't crash well. It's actually the second one I owned. I broke the first one, and I liked the first one a lot more. They're way different from each other, actually.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, actually, between like cast cymbals or stamped cymbals. The stamped ones that are actually coming from a sheet of metal, that they're actually like a machine is like literally stamping out the cymbal.
Yeah.
Those ones are way more consistent from cymbal to cymbal, and the ones that are actually individually cast vary quite a bit more.
Right.
And they tend to be a lot more expensive as well. But if you're, as you grow in your drumming career and you move into like more professional grade cymbals, you're probably going to end up with mostly cast cymbals.
Definitely.
Although I know that's not quite a hard and fast rule. At least most people don't want to claim that it is.
Right.
However, in my experience, it kind of is.
It just kind of gets adopted that way.
Yeah. I mean, just like all of the interesting cymbals with a lot of character and that have like complexity and like interesting tonal qualities to them and are, I would describe as more musical, tend to be ones that have a little bit more, care in the creation of them. It's not just a machine stamping them out,
Definitely.
But, whatever works for you. It's a different sound for sure. I think the stamped ones are way more like a specific tone.
You're right.
Like they just don't have the complexities that that cast cymbals have.
Yeah.
Even if they're not like hand hammered or something, like just the fact that it's a cast cymbal and every single one is not the exact same thing.
Right.
It just has some irregularities in the construction of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, of course, has to do with the lathing and whatever hammering, even if it's done by a machine.
Yeah.
Certainly if it's done by a human being,
it's
going to be even more complex,
For sure.
But those stamped ones, to me, they sound like a stamped cymbal because it sounds like it's just like a note. Like I don't want a note out of my cymbal, I want it to be, it's obviously going to have a fundamental tone, but I want there to be enough complexity in it that it's not a note. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just like there's more going on there. There's all these overtones.
Yeah.
And in my mind, you can play it with a lot more touch and a lot more feeling. It's a lot more of a dynamic cymbal.
Right.
And maybe that's a little bit like what you were talking about too, about how complex that K ride was.
Yeah.
Or is, I should say is. It still exists.
It's still there.
It's not dead yet.
Well, how about before we dive into that, let's take a quick little break, and then we'll be right back to talk about the variations of cymbals.
Sounds good. Hey everyone, this is Dave, and it's time for the tip of the day. So my tip here is about being in a rut as a drummer or playing poorly, feeling like you're doing that night after night, whether you're on tour or you're in rehearsal with your band or whatever it is. There were some times when I really felt like that. And for me, switching something with my set and my setup is the most significant and also kind of an easy change too. For me, it's about elimination. So I kind of need to go back to basics. So what I like to do is remove parts of the drum set actually. And there was one specific time where I felt like I was really like that on the road. It was actually years and years and years ago where we were touring with MXPX, and there was a series of shows where I was sick of it. I felt like I needed to do something different to get back on top of things because I was playing really poorly. So what I actually did was remove all of my crash cymbals and my rack tom. So I just ended up with a kick, snare, floor tom, a hi-hat, and a ride cymbal. And that was it. So that's a little bit extreme, but I actually played, I think, 3 or 4 shows in a row that way. And it just helped to change things up for me, just kind of like, smack yourself around a little bit to make yourself wake up and to think about what you're doing and not just to completely operate on muscle memory. For me, muscle memory is a huge part of how I play. I really need to have something practiced, and I can really, really get tight at it and hone it in. But sometimes if I'm just, if I'm just feeling stuck playing poorly over and over, I need to change that muscle memory. I need to think again and feel it again and be creative again. So, so that's a huge help for me. And I hope that you can implement that into your playing. And maybe if you're having a hard time, you can get rid of a tom or a cymbal or something. And maybe you'll see a nice little change. And then you can go ahead and add it back in. All right, guys, that's it for the tip of the day. Back to the show.
Hey, everybody, we are back, and we were talking about stamped cymbals versus cast cymbals. And to give you an example of what we're talking about, a lot of the stamped cymbals would be, for any Zildjian players out there, would be like your ZBTs and your ZHTs series. If you're a Sabian player, that'd be like the B8s would be a stamped cymbal, where there's cymbals that they're easier to get a hold of and they do the job. But like Dave was saying, they may not have as much tonal variation, may not have as long of a durability. Whereas a cast cymbal, like your A customs and HHXs, where they've got a lot more put into them and a lot more craftsmanship, you're going to get a lot better tone in the end. And that's kind of what we're talking about right now. And we were talking too about the finishes, and what I like about, for example, again, the K Light Ride, is it is a hand hammered finish. It's thin. What I love about it being such a big ride, it's a 22-inch, but the reason I use it as a crash is it opens up like a china, but it finishes like a crash, where it's kind of splashy and washy immediately, but the release is very long. And the reason for that, again, is because it's so thin, it can take a beating, and it almost bends as soon as you hit it, and you can actually see it bend. Whereas if you hit like a 22-inch ride, or a 22-inch a custom ride, is a lot thicker. The finish is different, so it's going to be a lot brighter, almost even harsh on your ears, and it may have just a thicker, more dense sound to it. And that all comes from the thickness and the finish of it is really what carries out how it opens and how it releases. I mean, what do you have to say, Dave?
Yeah, and we should say that earlier we touched on the thickness and that being kind of clanky and not being washy if it's super thick, or the thicker it is, the heavier the cymbal. But it also affects the pitch too. Like the fundamental is higher if it's a thicker cymbal. Right. So that's another reason why I like thin cymbals. Yeah, they're washier. You can crash on them, and to me they're not as obnoxious. Mm-hmm. Like when you hit them, they're not like, cymbals are just freaking loud, right? Yeah. They're just loud, and so they just they're in the same range as like the vocals, like the clarity of vocals. They're in the same range as guitars. Let me say that again, because I just hit that mic really hard. Uh-oh. They're in the same range as guitars. Mm-hmm. And so they tend to just get in the way, especially in smaller venues. Like you don't notice it if you're playing in a big band or you're in a really big room with a good PA or whatever, but that's not most people, right? Yeah. So you want to balance yourself as a player. And I think it's helpful, and I found it helpful for me, even if I am playing in a large room, I still want to balance myself as a player and present the drums as one instrument, and not we better turn the overheads are really, really loud. We got to turn those cymbals down or whatever. And especially, again, because I sing, cymbals are just even that much more a problem as far as their volume goes. Yeah. So the thinner cymbals do tend to be quieter. They are a lower fundamental pitch as well. So they're not just popping out as far as a high frequency as much. So that's another thing that I really like about a large, thin cymbal. Yeah. And then on top of that, we're talking about the finishes a little bit too. And that changes a lot. Well, it does change the tone for sure. It changes the stick attack quite a bit. And it does change the finish as well. So really, I mean, ultimately, I guess when it comes down to it, regardless of what you're talking about, whether it's the finish to some extent, but certainly the texture of the cymbal. I think a lot of it has to do with the texture of the cymbal, whether it's a raw, like a rough lathe or a very thin lathe, or or something that's hammered just a little bit with like a lot of little hammers, or like some cymbals have like a bunch of just huge hammers, right?
Yeah.
And especially if it's hand hammered, it has just a lot of variation that's irregular.
Right.
And so it actually changes the tonal quality, actually adds a lot of complexity and changes it's like a lot of little pitches get in the way with the fundamental almost. So it kind of spreads out that tone and creates like a sound that to me doesn't give me, as I talked about earlier with that stamped cymbal, it doesn't give me like a specific note. It's more of a feel.
Yeah.
There's complexity there. And again, I used the word musical earlier. Talking about cymbals is really difficult sometimes because there's all these words that just get thrown around.
Right.
Musical, complexity, buttery, washy, like all these things. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to nail down what some of them mean. But for lack of a certain amount of clarity right now, I would say the complexity added with those variations in a cymbal add to the musicality of it and with its versatility in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Well, and it's too, I don't know, like the stamped cymbal. The best example I can put to it is kind of like if you're using a cymbal sample where it's just going to be the same every time.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a stamp cymbal. Yeah,
yeah. Like it's there's not a lot of variation to it, but yeah,
I like that comparison. That's really funny.
Unfortunately, that's just the thing that I think of because
that's great.
When you said it earlier, it's almost like it's just the same note every time.
Yeah, it does sound like a note to me. It's just like, I don't know how else to put it. It doesn't seem that musical, you know?
Right.
And again, like you said, it gets the job done and it might be the exact thing that you need right now. Mm-hmm. And that's totally fine. And I know some people do claim that there are stamped cymbals that are good.
Yeah.
I really can't necessarily speak to that because that's not where my preference is.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
And then the other thing that kind of goes along with that is actually the alloy. Normally normally the higher end cymbals, the ones that have a little bit of care put into them, the ones that are actually cast tend to be made with a B20 alloy, which is bronze 20, which is bronze is copper and tin, and it's mostly copper and 20% tin is B20. And then B8 is the other one that's really common, which is the same thing. It's copper and tin, but it's only 8% tin.
Right.
And that tends to be what stamped cymbals are made of, the B8, right?
Yeah.
I think most of the cast ones are B20. And a lot of the companies have their variation on it, you know.
Right.
I think, well, I guess I won't get into it because I actually don't know. But I do know there are some variations out there. People have like a proprietary mix of metals that they use. So there is some variation there as well.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we keep talking about crashes and rides, and I love crashes and rides. Like one of my dreams is to have what I consider like a Rolodex of cymbals. You know, like we've talked before, like going into a studio, having options. It can get, cymbals can get expensive, man. Like, you know, you can definitely go down a financial hole with buying cymbals, but I think
they are expensive.
I think having the option is huge. And personally, I'm a big believer in sticking with the same company. That's just a peeve of mine, I guess, is to stick with the same brand. But
like when you see someone's kit and it has like 3 different brands of cymbals on it?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Are you talking about like if someone just has different brands of cymbals, or if they're like using on one specific kit?
Like using on one specific kit.
That just bothers you.
For whatever reason. And that may be like a pride thing.
It's fine.
I don't know. But like to me, it's like, no. Pick one.
I like this. I like hearing opinions like this. I think it's really fantastic because I feel like I want all my cymbals to match too. Uh-huh. But again, like recently I've been using this one Dream cymbal along with the rest of my Minels. Uh-huh. And it's like, people always talk about like creating the perfect combination of cymbals for like the tonality that works for them, and I can't even remember the term now that a lot of people use. It's like, I don't even know. It doesn't matter. But it is funny because I've always liked that uniformity of brand across the cymbals.
Yeah.
And so I totally hear you, and I love that you have this opinion. but I've been throwing one Dream in my my cymbal combination here lately.
Yeah, well, like I had a rehearsal last night, and again, I mean, I could talk on cymbals all day. Like everything else that has to do with drums, I could talk all day. But yesterday during the rehearsal, another drummer had used the drum kit I was using prior to me, and so he had an extra crash up there where normally I have, I think five crashes and rides like all together, but I was breaking it down to just 2 rides that I was just crashing on. Well, there was a third one, and it was a heartbeat. And, in the middle of the rehearsal, I was like, it's a cymbal, I'm going to hit it. But there was a point in the rehearsal where I realized it was not a Zildjian, and it bothered me.
Did you like it until then?
I mean, it was so washy. It was so washy that the overheads in my in-ears, I couldn't really hear it. I could hear just kind of almost like a splash. So, I mean, it sounds cool, I guess.
Like as in it blended it with everything, or as in it took over everything?
It blended with everything.
Cool. I like that.
It definitely kind of washed out a little bit.
I mean, I'm into that. I keep talking about how I'm into cymbals that just, you hit them, they do their thing, and they get out of the way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a super dry cymbal. Which, side note, I do like the Meinl dry stuff.
Right on.
I don't know about like the super dry, the extra dry stuff. I feel like that is tough to use.
Yeah.
But the dry is really cool. I borrowed a dry crash from my buddy Anthony Foti. What's up, Anthony? And to use on this Reliant K Halloween EP that we recorded.
Yeah.
And because I was recording the drums at home, and it was in the middle of tour, and we had like 3 days I was like going home for, and I left all my cymbals out on the road, not like not like by accident, but like I just like went home and I had all the drum kits and everything, and I was just like,
right.
I want one more cymbal. And so I just hit up my buddy, and I borrowed a Meinl dry from him, and it was so cool. So listen to the Halloween EP.
Sweet.
And the cymbal on the hi-hat side, that crash is a Meinl dry.
Okay.
I think it's a 20-inch.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It just like blends in. You kind of almost don't hear it.
Right.
It just like does what it's supposed to do.
I feel like a lot of companies are going to that right now. Like that's a big trendy thing. Like the crash that I was using for any heartbeat players, I'm personally not a big heartbeat player, but if any heartbeat players are out there, it was a 19-inch heartbeat studio crash. And that had that dry essence to it. But I feel like a lot of companies are going the dry route. Like Zildjian has their new K dry series or K super dry. Like the Meinl series you're talking about. Sabian certainly has theirs. And even into hi-hats, I think
that's where you were going 5 minutes ago.
That's where I was going. So before we go there, let's take another quick little break, and then we'll talk on some hi-hats.
Hi-hats.
Hey everyone, this is Travis, and today I'm going to be telling you a little story. A few years back, I had a band that I had helped start called The Afterglow, and we signed a small record deal with a publishing company in Oklahoma. And when we had signed the deal, one of the things that came along with that was we drove up to Oklahoma and recorded an album at their studio at their facility. And in the same building as a studio was an artist suite, where kind of like a green room where a lot of bands would go and sit and hang out and maybe take a break once or twice during the day while they were in their session. Well, we decided to make that our living space for the week, and so we slept there. Well, the downfall was that the artist suite had no shower. So while we stayed there for a week, we had to come up with ways to clean ourselves, such as sponge baths or not showering for a day or two. We even broke into a public pool and took a shower there, and then ended up getting kicked out later. But one day before the pool situation, our guitarist decided, enough is enough. I want a shower, and there's a car wash right across the parking lot. I'm gonna go walk through it. And so we followed him over there, and he had shampoo in hand, and was about to go through a drive-through car wash when all of a sudden this car pulls up and this guy with a sketchy ponytail and a soul patch, probably in his 50s or 60s, said, "What are you guys doing?" And I said, "Well, we're staying here and we don't have a shower." And he just chuckled and said, "Y'all can't do that. He's about to get seriously injured and could probably go to the hospital. Let's drive around back. I'll help you out." Which already sounded really weird enough, but we decided we have nothing to lose at this point, except maybe die. But we did it anyway. So we walked around back, and our guitarist stood in front of this man who was holding a spray nozzle water hose and spraying him down while he bathed himself in a public parking lot next to a highway. And that's one of my fondest memories of playing music, is watching my guitarist scrub himself down in a parking lot in Oklahoma being sprayed by an old man with a weird soul patch. So that's my story of the day. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about hi-hats finally. We've been trying to get to hi-hats for like 10 minutes, right, Travis?
Yeah, something like that.
And I'm not really sure exactly where you were going with it, but hi-hats, go.
No, like this whole time we've been talking about releases and finishes, but I felt like the overall theme of what we were talking about were crashes and rides. And I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit trail of just Chinas. Like I don't play on a China, but I feel like a ride you can talk on for hours, a crash you can talk on for hours, but hi-hats, I feel like that's its own world, because you're not really focusing so much on release. You're focusing usually like 80% of the time you're focusing on the chick, whenever like how it sounds when it's really tight. I feel like that's the first thing that I think of when I think of a hi-hat. And I used to play 14-inch Zildjian new beats until a couple months ago. I bought my first pair of K-Lite 16-inch hats. And
you probably love those.
Oh, I love them. And like the way my kit is set up, all my crashes are really high, and I get a lot of smack for it. But my hi-hats
like
are
80s, like 80s high,
like 80s high. Like there is a picture of Dave Grohl and my.
Are they like above your head?
They're above my head.
Dude, I did that for a little bit, and then they just like, the older I get, the more they come down.
Right.
It's lower and lower.
Yeah. Well, my hi-hats are the same. Like I sit really low, so that makes it even higher. Like my hi-hats are almost eye level with me.
Yeah, my hi-hats are really high, but they're not eye level, that's for sure, because I sit high.
Okay.
But my hi-hats are very high, so there's a lot of distance between the snare and the hi-hat.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit of distance, like pretty extreme compared to most drummers.
Sure.
But I think I've seen a couple of pictures of you, and it's like, maybe I might describe it as absurd.
Yeah.
Is it absurd?
Yeah.
It's like a long ways, right?
It's like a foot and a half between my snare and no joke. My snare is as low as it gets. It's tilted really far down, and my hats are all the way. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's always the biggest problem with recording. So like what I do a lot of times, that's what I do a lot of the time, right? I'm a music producer. I'm recording bands and stuff like that. So send me your music to mix. Okay. And then but that's always the biggest issue with snare drums, right? Is hi-hat bleed.
Yeah.
So like as far as recording goes, like Mark Townsend, who produced a ton of Relient K stuff and engineered a lot of it, of course, as well. You know, he would always make that comment, like, "Oh, good isolation on the snare." I'm like, "Well, yeah, the hi-hat's like a foot away." You know, so I record guys all the time who like, it's like trying to find a place to put the mic in, because like the hi-hat is like almost touching the snare. It's like they're like right on top of each other, you know. So that like becomes a real challenge. So you're just helping people out when they're recording. That's all.
That's right.
That's all you're doing.
I'm creating space.
That's perfect. You are creating space.
I had a guy comment on a video that I posted on Instagram. He said that my hi-hats weren't hi-hats; they were stratosphere hats or strato hats. And I was like, "Yeah, you're right there, man."
Strato hats,
dude.
That's good.
It cuts my sticks in half like nobody's business.
Oh yeah,
but it's just comfortable to me. Like that's like
whatever works. Like it does. Like there's the kind of traditional way to do things, and there's the ergonomic way to do things, and then there's what actually works for your body and what you're comfortable with. And if you can blend what your body naturally wants to do and what you can kind of do with your eyes closed, if you can blend that with some ergonomics, it's kind of, I feel like that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, it comes down to like your playing style,
Right.
and what works for you and what you kind of do automatically. Because that's another thing too. It's just like if I am playing something that is like more light-handed, right?
Yeah.
Then I don't need to spread my drum kit out and put my cymbals as far away.
Right.
I bring things in a little bit tighter so I can be more controlled. But like most of the time I'm playing rock and roll. Like I'm playing with Reliant K and I'm just like, it's full arms all the time,
Right.
you know? So I want like big arm swings. Like it's fast, hard hitting. And I want to be able to like really swing for it when I hit a cymbal, you know?
Yeah.
Again, like that's another reason it's like, I need to get quieter cymbals because like I hit them too hard, you know?
Right.
So there's like a balance that needs to be played there. But yeah, dude, you just do whatever's comfortable, what works for you, you know?
Definitely. Well, and I like having them high too. And the reason I have my all the rest of my cymbals so high, I'm a really heavy hitter, and I love just smacking the snot out of my crashes. Well, my hi hats too. Those K lights, as big as they are, they get really washy. So if you just hit them while they're wide open, it creates this clashy, washy kind of sound where I do just hit them while they're open. And having them that high, I really can put a lot of swing behind my stick and hit them.
Yeah.
And at the same time, for me, a lot of people may contest it, but I'm able to get the articulation still as high as they are with using the beat of my stick or whatever.
You can get the tip of your stick around on them.
I mean, I've never really played just the bead on top of it. I've always played the edge of my hi-hats. Like,
yeah, me too.
always.
Me too.
What kind of hi-hats do you use?
I use like Meinl medium, 14-inch Meinl.
14s, okay.
Byzance traditional.
Okay.
So kind of up the middle, you know, as far as that goes, the traditional finish, the 14-inch, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, those have worked really well for me for a lot of years. I've used a couple different ones, and I own a few different hats.
Yeah.
But those are the ones that I'm going to take with me on the road and record with most of the time. Sometimes I'll record with some other things that I have, but
Cool.
those are my main hats, though. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're pretty expected. You know, they're kind of up the middle as far as that goes.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Byzance. I've heard so much about Byzance recently. Like that's a relatively new line from Meinl, isn't it?
No, it's like what I've always used from Meinl.
Okay. I don't know much about Meinl, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's their like it's like their A line for like as far as like Zildjian goes. You got the A traditional line.
Right. Okay.
It's basically that's what the Byzance is.
I see.
It's like lathed. It is hammered. But yeah, it's like thin lathe and it's a traditional finish.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of their up the middle cymbals, but they're like top notch, man. They're super good. I really like them a lot.
Cool. Have you ever played any bigger hi-hats or any smaller, or have you always played 14s?
I've pretty much always played 14s. I've played with 16s a few times, but I've never owned them.
Okay.
But I liked them for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I actually took a pair of 16-inch. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. I did some drum sessions like a week ago for 3 different projects. Recorded a song for each, and I took with me 2 18-inch crashes that I was going to try out as hats on one song, and then by the time we got to it, I was just like, oh, we're rolling. I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. So I actually didn't do it, but I'm kind of bummed that I didn't do it now because I really wanted to see what in the world 2 18-inch crashes would sound like as hats.
I've actually done that. I've mentioned his name a bunch of times, but Garrett Goodwin played. I think he moved down to 16 or 17s, but when he came into Austin and we were hanging out, and he played 18-inch hats, and I was like, well, I don't have 18-inch hats, but I have 2 18-inch crashes, and we took an A custom projection crash 18 on top.
I have that cymbal.
I love that cymbal, man.
You do?
Oh,
the A custom projection?
The 20-inch projection is one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah.
I like A customs. I don't know if I love them anymore, but I used to play a lot of A customs. But the A custom, when you add the projection into the title, it just does something to the sound I don't like.
Gotcha.
It just, I don't know. It just like, again, it adds a little bit of clank to it. It adds like a little bit of a note to it.
Yeah.
It does project.
Yeah.
But that is like maybe what I don't like about it.
I understand that. And I'm really specific with A customs. Like the projection crash, I only use on my left crash, and I use a 21-inch Brilliant Sweet Ride, which is a lathe cymbal, but I use that as a crash. But then my rides are usually like a dry lathe, like a raw lathe, or those hand hammered ones. But
so you never crash on your ride?
I crash on my ride all the time, but I don't.
Oh, you do?
But I don't use a Brilliant Finish ride for my main ride because it's so tinny and it's so bright. If I'm riding on it, it can just be way overpowering. If I use a dull finish, it's not so much.
Right.
But
you feel like it opens up enough with the dull finish. It's just like it's washy enough
for what I want, because my main ride is a 24-inch A medium ride, and so it's really big, and I can articulate a lot of different sounds on it. But when
you have two rides in your normal setup?
Yeah, well, the 24 is my main ride where I ping on, where it's got enough. I never play bells, but it has a bell on it. But I can crash on it. But I have 3 rides. The other 2 rides I use as crashes, just because they're big. I love the way they finish. And
right.
Yeah, most of my crashes are rides.
Man, Travis, there's like so much stuff that we have in our outline here that we haven't touched on at all, and I think it's like time that we need to wrap this thing up. So I think this is actually the month that we're starting to do 2 episodes a month, right?
Yeah, August 1st.
Awesome.
And the 15th.
That's perfect. Yeah. So the 15th, it is now the 1st or after, depending when you're listening to this, of August. And the 15th will be our next episode. And is it cool if we just continue this?
I think that's a great idea.
I mean, there's just a lot more here to get to, and I think we can just kind of wrap things up a little bit nicer if we dive in. And we'll see about how we structure that. But I think we need to wrap up a little bit of kind of like some of the basic cymbal things that we haven't hit yet. So
definitely.
Cool.
Yeah. So with that said, guys, stay tuned for our next episode on cymbals. We will be continuing this topic because there's a lot of stuff that you guys need to hear, and it can give you some time too to ask us any questions. Reach out to us on our social media at Instagram and Facebook. You can email us directly too. You can hit us up at drumchats.com. And we're going to do a quick shout out to our friend Tom. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but it's MCGEOCH. Tom reached out to us the other day. And Tom, we appreciate you for listening, man. And for the rest of you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, we'll be back talking about cymbals in a couple weeks. This is Travis and Dave. You're listening to the Drum Chats podcast, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.